So, the Nintendo Switch 2 has been a hot topic on the internet and on YouTube over the course of 2023 so far, which in some ways I find very cool and exciting as someone who's been invested in this conversation for literally 3 years now. And in other ways, I find it just kind of strange and odd. It's admittedly a little hard for me to quantify why I find this conversation or this situation on YouTube around the Nintendo Switch 2 as odd, but it just feels kind of weird, I think, the way everyone has kind of glommed onto this concept. And a lot of folks and a lot of discussions I see out there are kind of running with some stranger ideas and theories, rumors, or leaks that I don't necessarily think really are that when it comes to the Nintendo Switch 2, right? Or the idea of Nintendo's next device. However, like I said, I do also find it kind of cool because, as I mentioned, and if you've been following me for a while, you already know this, I've been talking about the concept of a Switch 2 for 3 years. I mean, it was like early 2020, right around the time the pandemic was beginning, maybe even before the pandemic. It's hard for me to remember now. But I started discussing with you guys that I predicted in 2022 or 23, which we're in right now, would probably be the time that Nintendo would be looking at moving on from the Nintendo Switch, right? And that could have meant a variety of things. That could have meant, the reveal and the confirmation of a Nintendo Switch 2. It could have meant the reveal and the release of the Nintendo Switch 2. I think it's too early for us to predict if we're going to play the thing in 2023. But, whether it was a reveal, a confirmation, a release, a trailer, or even just behind the scenes rumblings and rumors and dev kits and all this kinds of thing. Basically, the idea of the general consumer and game fan and Nintendo fan being ready to accept the idea of a Switch 2, being ready to say, we want the next thing, the Nintendo Switch feels like it's past its prime. Those were all concepts that in 2020 I started saying I think are going to happen in 2022 or 23. And so that's why when I see the internet and YouTube's kind of obsession, that I want to call it, happening right now in 2023, in this window of time I predicted 3 years ago, I do find it kind of fascinating and certainly kind of cool. And on top of the fact that I was already kind of thinking this way a couple of years ago, it's also cool because to me, as a game fan and as a Nintendo fan, yeah, I want the Switch 2. I want their next thing. Whatever it is, I can't wait to see it. I can't wait to understand it. And of course, I can't wait to play it, And that's, of course, in the world where any of this turns out to be kind of true, and that maybe we will see it revealed this year, and maybe we will play it this year or next year in 2024. That's all very exciting to me, and it's not because I don't love the current Switch. The naysayers I've been kind of fielding comments and pushback from the past 3 years have kind of, I think, been the kind of Nintendo fan that hasn't been able to understand or accept that eventually Nintendo, just like any company, moves on from their current device. No matter how popular it is at its peak, every console and device's popularity wanes, and every company, Nintendo included, eventually is going to move on from it. And over the past 2 years, I've heard people pushing back as if they thought that me predicting the Switch 2 in the future, because at the time it was the future, it's actually still the future, but, me predicting a future Nintendo Switch over the past few years, it's like the naysayers just felt I was trying to say something bad about the current Switch. And it was a very weird way to defend their own fanship of the current Nintendo console on the market. And it's like, you guys, I've never had an actual problem with the Switch. I've loved it and supported it since day one. I still love it today. I mean, are you kidding me? Tears of the Kingdom and Pikmin 4, which will be two 10 out of 10 games for me, are literally coming out in the upcoming weeks and months. I mean, I'm a big Nintendo fan. I'm a big Switch fan. But it's possible to be a fan of the current device on the market while also being ready to move on from it, or excited for whatever the possible future devices and future business decisions from that company may tend to be. And of course, since we're talking about Nintendo, it's possible to be a fan of the current Switch, but also excited and ready for the next Switch. And so if we focus back in on what we're seeing right now, we come back to, like I said, YouTube and the internet's obsession that we're seeing right now with the Nintendo Switch 2. And this is coming in the form of people just excited about it and talking about it and theorizing and predicting it like I've been doing for a couple of years. People who weren't willing to do it or think about it a few years ago when I was, but a lot of people now are, because as I kind of felt like I saw coming, this just felt like the ideal window of time over 6 years into the Switch's life. We're in year 7 right now. It just made sense to me. That 10-year plan that Kimishima talked about, I understood why they said that, but I didn't think that that ruled out the possibility of a Switch 2 releasing before 10 years was over, if that kind of makes sense. And so we're seeing it in a few ways. Like I said, some people just theorizing and predicting. And then we're also seeing, we're kind of entering the period where very suspicious leaks and rumors and weird conversations are going around out there. And I'm trying to think of how I want to talk about it. I find a lot of it disingenuous. That doesn't mean that any of it's real or not real. And again, I mean, I'm the number one Switch 2 person, right? Because again, I think, the first person on the internet willing to talk about this idea when the Switch was selling at its peak and no one wanted to hear anything about it. I put myself out there back in 2020. And so in 2023, we're seeing people start to dive in and say, oh, this is being leaked, this is being rumored, this is being confirmed, yada, yada, yada. And I don't really think that there's any evidence to that. And so what we're seeing is people who are just so dying to get conversations about the Switch 2 out there that I think we're seeing, I guess I'm going to go back to the word I've already used here, obsession. We're seeing this obsession with it. And to be fair, the audience and the people who watch YouTube videos and have conversations online about this stuff and react to this kind of stuff, they're responding to it, which to me comes back to being a net positive, because the net positive is the people, game fans, Nintendo fans, content creators, are all interested and excited to see what Nintendo is going to do next. So then we ask ourselves, does Nintendo understand the truth of this? Is their business model predicting that this is the time for them to prepare to reveal their next console? And will we then see it revealed sometime soon? So my answer to that, purely from the perspective of speculation, is yes, we probably will see it revealed sometime soon, just like I was predicting in 2020, right? That probably in 22 or 23 we would see it revealed. And so yeah, I think we're probably going to see it revealed at the end of the year, just like I've thought for a long time. Now, trying to talk about some of the more specific stories out there, there are people running with this concept that the Switch is going to be revealed like in June, in a June Nintendo Direct. And here's the thing, I do think a June Nintendo Direct is totally possible. I really think it's even likely. I'm privy to a lot of behind-the-scenes information. That certainly has happened in the past. I haven't heard anything about a Switch 2 being revealed soon. I haven't even heard anything about a Nintendo Direct soon, so maybe other people know things, and so that's fine. I'm of course not the be-all, end-all. I'm just a small little channel here that's been crawling along for a decade on YouTube. But I will say, even though I don't know yes or no, I do think it's not likely that we're going to see the Switch 2 revealed in June. I really feel like what makes the most sense is for them to reveal it at the end of the year and release it sometime early on in 2024. And this is coming from someone who even thought in 2020 that we would be playing the thing this year. And I kind of don't know that I really believe that anymore. I really think that it's probably going to make the most sense for it to release next year, Granted, let's be clear, to myself and to all other YouTube content creators talking about this stuff right now, we could all be wrong. I could have been wrong for 3 years, and maybe Nintendo isn't going to reveal or release the thing for another couple of years. What if that's the case? Now, I think that would be a potential mistake. I think Nintendo risks losing a lot of market share, and they risk losing the strength in the Nintendo brand that is at almost an all-time high right now, at least since the 90s. And I think that, as I've been saying for a while, I think it makes more sense for Nintendo to reveal and release a Switch 2 while the Switch is still popular and selling well, even though sales are declining. I think they still have great strength in brand and great momentum in sales, and why not carry that momentum into the next thing? I think that makes sense. I think if they wait a few more years, they risk losing that momentum, waiting for the brand and the popularity to die, and then try to resurrect it with a new device. And could that succeed? Yes. But will it be a harder hill to climb? I personally do think so. But one thing we know for sure is that I think we've seen enough signs that people are ready for the Switch 2. And so I hope Nintendo doesn't miss this opportunity. I hope that they truly have been planning for this for the last 2 or 3 years. That they knew eventually we're going to hit this window of time. 2023 is probably going to be when this happens. That things are going to slow down. We're going to release our biggest game of the generation with Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Zelda has always been a fantastic bridge title where it might release cross-generationally, or it might be a swan song to one generation so that they can kickstart the next generation. It's releasing almost in the dead middle of the year. And so hopefully they've been preparing for 2023 to be the year to get this big Zelda game out and then begin a new marketing push for their next device that'll release in the next 6 to 18 months. I really want to think that that's going to be what they're planning. And the fans are clearly ready for that, because content creators and fans and commenters and viewers and game fans are clearly interested in a Switch 2. And again, we don't even know if it's going to be Switch 2. We don't know if it's going to be a hybrid. We don't know if it's going to be some other standard console or some weird device, a VR helmet, or who knows what they're going to do. But something I think is being planned. And I think that the fans know that, and everyone is ready for it. No one dislikes the Switch, but I think people are really recognizing that, okay, the Switch is really reaching the end of its life. I mean, it's struggling with its performance on a lot of games. It's missing out on a lot of third-party titles, and it's just time. And sales are slowing. The sales are still strong in their own vacuum, but they're slowing. So it's not about what the number is, it's about the trajectory. Is the trajectory going up? Is the trajectory plateauing? Or is the trajectory going down, right? So you could say 15 million Switches sold in 1 year is a great single number. But if the prior years were much higher and it's going down, that's the takeaway for numbers, right? And so all of these things just show that I think that fans are ready for another Switch, and it's a great time for Nintendo to capitalize on it, man. I hope that they don't miss the boat on this. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again, to me, this is actually the most exciting time to be a Nintendo fan or a game fan. It's this window of time where we're speculating and theorizing about and expecting some kind of new device from one of our favorite companies, in this case, Nintendo. I've likened it in the past to the NX period, you know, and I was somebody who was on YouTube covering Nintendo and covering video games and covering the Wii U and the PS4 and Xbox One and all that stuff. Covering mostly the Wii U, covering all that stuff, you know, back at the time, 2015 and 2016, when the Nintendo NX was all the buzz and it was this huge mystery, and it was such a wonderful, fun, exciting time. And even though I don't love how I see a lot of people covering Nintendo Switch stuff, or Nintendo Switch 2 stuff, I should say, and even though I think that there's a lot of disingenuous conversation and maybe some fabricated information or leaks and rumors and stuff going out there, and again, I say that without even knowing that, you know, I'm just guessing. So full disclosure, I could be wrong on that stuff, just like anyone could be wrong with what they're talking about. But even though, just from my own perspective as a fan and you know, a decade-long YouTuber here, I may not love how a lot of the stuff is being covered or discussed, but it's still nice to just see the conversation out there and see that content creators are interested in talking about it, and see that game fans and Nintendo fans are interested in learning about it and hearing about it and thinking about it. It just means, like I've already said a few times in this discussion here, that Nintendo is in a great position to capitalize on this hype and momentum. And I think it is going to happen. And I love this period where it's like, ooh, what are they going to do next? What's Nintendo going to do? What's the next device going to be? When is it going to be revealed? When is it going to release? Most importantly to me, what games are we going to play on it? Is Metroid Prime 4 going to be a Switch 2 launch title? Is the next Mario game going to release on it? Will we get a Tears of the Kingdom Definitive Edition or a next generation patch when that releases? What about Mario Kart 9? Is that going to release, or is that going to be a launch title? What about a new IP? What about Monolith's next game? You know, what about a Donkey Kong game? I can start listing off and rattling off all of these ideas. The next Star Fox or the next F-Zero, are these planned for a next Nintendo console, a Switch 2? This is when it just starts to be fun, because we get to wonder. Yes, some people online, on YouTube, can be, and are being, in my opinion, irresponsible with some of their conversations and maybe the frequency of stuff getting out there. I think we're in a very strange and confusing time when it comes to that stuff. It's not harmful, so let me just clarify. I don't think there's anything actively wrong with it. I just find it very odd and a little bit confusing, but it is what it is, and that's just how I think YouTube and video game discussion works, and people are clearly responding to it, and so that's fine. But I just like that we're in the period where we get to wonder and be excited about it. I hope Nintendo is ready to capitalize on it. I think that they're going to. Are we going to see a Switch 2 revealed in June? Maybe, but probably not. Are we going to see it revealed near the end of the year? Yeah, I think so. I really do think. Same with Metroid Prime 4. Before December 31st of 2023 hits us, I think we will have seen confirmation from Nintendo about a Switch 2 and about Metroid Prime 4. Will we play those things this year? Maybe, but probably not. Will we see them before the year is over? I do think so. So that's what I think about all this stuff. It's a very exciting time, and so that's about it.